Moving on to our last session for this particular hall, I would like to invite Kapil Sharma, Director Engineering Tricentis, for a session on Journey of Enterprises Embracing Innovative Automation. Kapil is Director of Consulting Services at Tricentis India. With more than a decade of experience in test automation services, he has been instrumental in establishing cross-functional collaboration in delivering pilot projects, leading to licensing and services business. Let's give a big round of applause to Kapil Sharma, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello everyone, good evening. At least my team can say, good evening. I have a couple of people with me here. So let me shift the gears a bit. I hope you are not expecting by the name Kapil Sharma with comedy nights. Huh? If you're expecting, sorry for the mismatch in the expectation, but I'm not the same. But there is a coincidence there. From where Kapil Sharma I have studied, I have also studied from the same university. So there is some association. But let me also shift the gear in terms of the overall talks that we were having throughout the day. We have been talking about Gen AI, we have been talking about innovation, we have been talking about multiple other things which are quite innovative. Let me pull our thought towards one very, very key and important aspect, that is test automation. Let me ask a question from you. So whenever we think about enterprises, and this has been the common problem happening in both the rooms, the slides are moving on their own. This is also the automation. But let me ask you a question, that when we talk about enterprise business, wherein the landscape is so complicated, the platforms are so diverse, and the overall software development cycle is ongoing, when you start thinking about the testing cycles or the test automation part of it, be it that functional testing, non-functional testing, is it during the early stages of the software development, or is it during the mid stages of the software development, or at the end stages of the software development? What is your opinion on it? So is it early, mid, or the last? Anyone who have any thoughts around it? How many of us say at the last stage of the software development? No? How many of us say that the testing thought process starts happening from the beginning itself when we start thinking about the software development? Okay, good. Good. So, but you can see that testing is as critical as software development, and it's not anymore an afterthought, because without having the confidence in place that my software that I am developing is not only matching the functional requirements that are expected to be there from a business point of view, but the software is ready for release as well, and that can be ensured only when we have the right testing in place. So, I will be touching upon that topic a bit. I will skip my introduction, not required. We will be talking about, first of all, the why part of it. My slides are moving a bit. Okay. Okay, so there are three key aspects that we will talk about. That first of all, why enterprises needs to have an innovative automation approach in place. The company I belong to is Tricentis, and we pretty much started thinking about test automation from an holistic and end-to-end point of view 20 years back. So when people were just thinking of having testing in place from a manual point of view, we were having a product in place that was having end-to-end automation in place for the entire tech stack. Because even today when we talk about testing and test automation, we are primarily thinking about web automation, mobile automation, or web service automation. But when we talk about enterprises, it's not just these three key stacks. We are talking about multiple other things, and Karthik was talking about in his session, in the main session, that we have to also think about shifting left. If we really have to do that shift left motion in the entire DevOps journey, testing is very critical, and my slides are playing wonders with me today. Can you operate it manually? Can someone operate it manually? They're moving very fast. Okay, fine. So I was just talking that DevOps cycle, if you talk about the biz to the customer journey, somewhere in between before the ops comes into picture, testing is very critical. And it's not the case that once the testing is done, we are done. Testing is as continuous and as crucial as the overall life cycle of your software development. So that is one critical reason that testing have become more mission critical nowadays. Apart from that, the cloud native mindset, that is now we have been hearing from the morning that the overall thought process of enterprises in adopting the cloud as a notion for developing the entire software stack is also leading more aspects in terms of your testing challenges, because the more heterogeneous environment you will go for, microservices will come into picture, containerization will come into picture, all those aspects will come into picture. So we would also need some platform in place that can make sure that the entire testing can be taken care of as well, right. So most of the budgets and most of the releases that are delayed nowadays by the enterprises are happening because they are not able to test early, and that is really impacting the overall business release as well. So we have the possibility to address that. This is how a typical enterprise landscape looks like. It's not only about applications. Applications are fine. We are talking about heterogeneous applications which are having packaged, which are having homegrown, which are having third party applications as well, and then there is an integration that is happening across all these platforms. And when we talk about testing them, it's not only that we can focus only on the application area. We have to talk about architecture, we have to talk about processes, we have to also talk about the practices that the enterprises have in place in terms of testing the applications. So this is something which is a typical landscape, and this also may, is asking us to have some thought driven towards having automation testing and testing to be done pretty much early in the cycle, as well as have some innovation added to it. Some numbers, these are not from our side, these are from Forrester. The numbers have further significantly grown. There is a study from Gartner that says that over the next 3-4 years, the enterprises will be required to invest 30 to 40% of their business towards testing as well. That is something which is as crucial as the overall innovation spend that we are doing over the overall cloud and native application development, as well as the AI spend that we are doing. But some of the enterprises are dealing with the problems of releasing the quality software in time, and since they are not able to do it, it's also bringing the impact on the business. So this is very, very critical to have the testing in place, and I already talked about the heterogeneous landscape. So just think about the mainframe systems, think about the PDF files that are getting generated, think about those C++, Java and C# applications that are used by internal users and external users. When we talk about integration testing, when we talk about UAT testing, and we have to make sure that the entire application landscape is tested properly, we cannot just rely on testing and automating our web interfaces. So we have to make sure that the overall landscape is automated and nothing is manual, because if it is manual, irrespective of the tools and methodologies that are in place of fastening your development cycle, in fact we can also fast track our operation cycle, but if testing in between is a bottleneck, then the overall pace will not grow in the way the enterprises want. So testing have to also be managed in the same way as we are having the thought process towards development and operations. Some of the trends that we can look at, and most of the thought process in the trends which I am going to show are coming from the products that we are already having with us. So we have products around test automation, which are end-to-end enterprise test automation. We have platform test for test management. We have platform for scaling your automation as well in terms of performance testing, and we have the overall umbrella of analytics in place that helps you to understand how your overall testing portfolio is looking like. What is the percentage of the business risk that we have covered in terms of the overall application automation that we have to do. So one of the trend is that we have to move away or shy away from individual siloed automation approaches. So that means we cannot afford to have frameworks developed on top of some platforms which are just asking our effort to keep on investing in framework development, and then we are having one framework for web automation, we have one framework for web services, one for mobility, and we do not have any clue around the other applications that are part of our core business area as well. So if that is the approach that we are taking, then it will not be possible for the enterprises to scale. They have to move from an approach of a siloed tool based automation to a platform effect, which is there with Tricentis from so many years now. The single platform should be able to handle the complete tech stack, and that too in a way which is not asking you to do coding, because if we talk about the testing and test platforms as of today, most of the testing platforms would be asking you to have some or the other programming awareness, be that Python, C#, Java or any other programming language. What happens with that approach in place is that you invest a lot of time in writing the scripts, then focusing on the actual test value that you want to spend your money on. So the platform have to be having the capability of either no code, if it's really something which is feasible, but at least it should be having a low code potential, that when we are trying to move towards a testing journey as part of that entire DevOps life cycle, and it have to continue in an infinite way. So we are having the possibility to keep the testing maintained within that release cycle. Our release cycles are getting shorter and shorter, and if our testing cycles are surpassing that cycle, we would not be able to keep the pace there. So we have to make sure that the tools themselves are having the possibility for us to develop automation in a pretty quick way. A bit of the modeling part of it, how we have been able to achieve it internally within Tricentis for so many years now. So we have a concept called as model based test automation that allows you to decompose the overall architecture first of all of your application, irrespective of the technology stack, be it your database, be it your desktop based applications, be it your web or be it your mobility. The same methodology and approach will be applied there. So first of all, we capture the technical components as one model, we capture the data models as another model, and then we identify the reusable components as a third model. So these three are the foundational and fundamental aspects of achieving automation. Any automation tool, be that in process automation, be that in test automation, be that in performance testing, if you talk about all of these tools, they would need that technical information to be there in place, and we capture that through the models, which are technical models, and it's not working again. And then we also capture the data models. One of the major problem with testing and automation is that the time when the release is about to happen and we are supposed to start a regression suite and we are supposed to start a test automation, our data is not available. Either it is already consumed or it is not available at that point in time, and that is called as maintenance trap or data trap as well. So that can be pretty much addressed. So in Tricentis technology, what we do is we actually componentize that. We actually have models created around all of that, and then during the recompose stage, when we are developing the test cases and the execution have to happen, we start stitching them together. And it is so easy to use that we have seen the functional users becoming automation specialists. A decade back, there was a term which was very prominent and similar to what we are hearing in today's time, that whether Gen AI will be actually having some impact on the jobs. The same was the case couple of years back when people were saying that automation is coming and the test automation will come. Will it eliminate the use of or the need of manual testers? It have not happened. We are the witness of that. We have been witnessing it in the industry. We are ourselves into that domain, and we have seen that how the automation technology have enabled the functional users, the business users to elevate in their careers and become automation specialists if the platform or the technology is providing them with assistance. We have seen that journey and transition happening, and that is the reason why we are also able to believe in the fact that all this Gen AI and innovation that is happening around AI will also not be bringing that kind of impact if we are able to keep the right track and career path available for the users who are going to be the recipients of this information and technology. So we have already done that. We have achieved it a couple of years back already. Further to innovate the automation, we can leverage some of these areas. I think the previous speaker was talking about computer vision. There is a possibility to have the computer vision capabilities imbibed into your automation tools itself. We have done that already in our technology space. What it can do is that the way human being is looking at an application page, let us say there is an application form which is a user registration form, and the way we are looking at it from a user perspective, there are a couple of text boxes, there are a couple of buttons, there are a couple of radio buttons. The way we interact with it, the computer vision technology can also help us to interact with the application in the same way. Another important area is that whenever we create our automation suites, we are executing them today, but then we are executing them tomorrow, the same test cases are failing. And that is a typical problem of automation. Can that be dealt with? Yes, it can be dealt with. It can be dealt with something called as self-healing. We have already achieved that. I'm just giving you a glimpse of the overall concept, that how it is being done and how we have been able to do it. So on the left hand side, you can see how computer vision technology is being embraced by us, and on the right hand side, like my left, your right, the self-healing capability and the self-healing concept, how it have been really embraced by us. So self-healing says, rather than relying on just a set of properties, can we have pooled properties which are being ranked on some criteria, so that the next time when your execution is happening of your automation, if the same set of properties are not available, can your automated test case go back and check what other pooled properties are available based on the priority, and can it automatically retrieve those properties, use it for that point in time, have your test case go and pass, and then also trigger and mark it as that the self-healing capabilities were used. So that if the user later on want to do an RCA, root cause analysis, and want to figure out, was it really a problem in my test case? Was it a real functional problem? Do we need to raise a bug out of it? or is it just something that the environment was not behaving the way it was supposed to behave. So, all those capabilities are part of self-healing. We have already been doing it, and on the computer vision side we have also the neural network in place that is being trained on trillions of data, which are the different shapes and sizes of the controls available on different type of application areas, and on using that kind of training model in place, we are able to identify those controls at the time of identifying them, the scanning process, the decompose process that I talked about, and at the time of execution of your test cases, the automated test cases, it can also leverage the same set of information and understand those controls. So, that means when you are automating web applications, you are not required to rely on the technical properties which are loading in the browser behind the scene. If you are talking about a mobility application on Android or iOS, the native platforms, we are not required to rely on the native stack there. The computer vision can help you to see the controls in the same way as we are seeing as users. This is something which is very, very prominent and critical if the enterprises really want to go to that scale and pace which they want to achieve from an automation perspective. Another key area is predictive analysis. I think a lot of speakers talked about it, but I will be talking about it more from a testing perspective and the reporting part. Every testing component, every testing tool, when we are actually executing it release by release, and when we are embracing the overall test automation and testing as part of our agile motions, we have to make sure that whatever the data is getting captured as part of our test cases, as part of our execution results, we are able to use it. The best uses of that kind of data, the historical data, as well as some parameters that we can provide as part of the next execution, can help us to do this kind of predictive analytics. Another architecture component, a conceptual one only, the real technical design and architecture looks different, but what we have achieved within our landscape is that from a testing point of view, the CI/CD integration is very critical. No one wants to have the deployment and the build getting done separately by the ops team, and as soon as the new application component is available, we do not want to go manually and trigger our automation. So, that means any automation tool or any automation capability that is claiming that we want to help you pace your enterprise DevOps journey need to have the capability and possibility in place to have the integration through CI/CD tool chain, so that as soon as the latest release is available or the developers are doing the latest check-in in the code, the entire automation portfolio should be triggered, and this is something which is quite commonly available in most of the tools. It is achieved through APIs. You might have observed there is a API component added to most of the conceptual diagrams that I showed. So, everything that is getting achieved in terms of these integrations need to have those kind of APIs in available. So, that means the tools that are claiming that automation is easy, they need to also have the possibility to embrace other tools from an integration perspective and have to expose the APIs that can be used. So, from an predictive analytics perspective, so when we have the CI/CD pipeline that is triggering our automation and we have the execution environment, we do not want to execute everything on one machine. Just imagine you are testing a very mission critical and business critical application which is on the banking side, and you have around 2000 test cases that you want to execute, and these are end-to-end scenarios starting from a web application, going to a mobility, going to a database, going to a microservices, going to a desktop based application, and further having some data validations in place. And if some of these test cases are end-to-end and per test case it is taking 30 to 40 seconds to execute, these 2000 test cases might take a lot of time for you to really reach to a stage wherein you can decide that your application is ready for release or not. So, to avoid that kind of challenge, generally there is a concept of having an environment in cloud place which can be termed as execution environment, where we have multiple VMs or machines available, and the test cases which we have created can be distributed across these machines, so that the overall execution cycle can be reduced. And once that execution cycle is being done, the data that is coming back can be used for that predictive analytics. So, we have some research internally going on this area, where we would be able to predict before the next regression execution that based on the environmental factors and based on the different parameters that are available for that application area, what is the expectation to have bugs or defects detected as part of that execution, how many issues will be really falling under the category of environmental issues, how many of the defects will be coming under the category of the data issues, because every failure that happens in your test case is not really a defect of your application. I hope we understand that, because there are multiple factors that influence your testing as well. Moving ahead, test data management is very, very critical. This is just a very simplified version. Just imagine that you are you are in a domain of transportation. Let us suppose airline domain, and you have two systems, one for booking the tickets and one for letting the users do the check-in. Now, when your booking system is creating PNRs, you have the PNRs getting generated, and then there is second set of test cases that you have to execute so that you can check in through these PNRs. Just assume that between this phase, someone have already used those PNRs. Would you be able to execute your check-in test cases? No. So, your integration environment will break. So, that means there is some state associated with your data, and the testing have to make sure that this state is maintained, and there is a possibility that we are able to have stateful test data management. So, there are two variants, static or synthetic test data management, and then another critical one is dynamic test data management, which is also critical when we are identifying the overall strategy of our testing. I think time is running out, I will move a bit fast. Very, very critical component, you might have heard it already, service virtualization. As we are moving more and more towards web services, microservices, cloud native, we are having a lot of third party APIs. For example, I think we were hearing that Uber also leverages behind the scene Maps APIs. Now, what if when the Uber is getting opened up, the application, the Maps API is not working because it is managed by third party. So, in the testing environment, your testing might pause there. So, for us to avoid that kind of situation, there is a virtualization possibility. It is pretty much available in most of the automation tool. It is there with Tricentis as well. What it does, it is a smart way of ensuring that the request that is coming from your system under test, if it is actually can be entertained by the real server, it allows it to pass through and let the real response come back. If the real service is not working, then the virtualized environment can respond back. But just be careful that it is a paired request and response. That means if you have a defined request, the same kind of response will always come back. It is not intelligent enough to have the new response generated for you. I will not talk about GenAI a lot because from a test automation perspective, we ourselves are having some research going on internally on this, that how the capabilities can be really leveraged for automation. There are definitely a lot of possibilities for application development, but from a software testing perspective, from an automation perspective, we are exploring the possibilities that how GenAI can be used there, and the methodology is also very important. So, we cannot just start testing anything. So, we have to make sure that we are first of all identifying those test cases, those business areas which are very critical, and then we are going for intelligent automation, patching data with security testing, and then checking that whether the same functional scenario can scale as well. So, functional have to be further followed by the performance testing as well, because the scaling is very important. I will skip through some of the slides. Okay, just want to show you this one. So, this is the typical methodology that an enterprise should follow. We have already proven for 2000 plus customers, most of them are enterprises in multiple domains, and they have been able to achieve a lot of success in terms of, I will show you some numbers as well, how they have been able to really reduce the time and effort and money that they have been investing in terms of testing, as well as optimizing the overall achievement in terms of the release cycles. So, this methodology is very important, and these are the numbers that I was talking about, and these are the real numbers that we have been able to see with multiple customers by having a combination of the technology and combining that with the methodology that is required to have the test automation in place. Timeline, this is my last slide. What is the right time for enterprises to think about it? We have been seeing enterprises pretty much adopting it from last 2 decades, even though they have their own internal challenges, because the processes are very rigid, the application stacks are very complex, and from a process point of view, it is not easy to onboard a new tool. But we have seen that once they embark on this journey of enterprise automation, they are able to achieve benefits out of it. So, the time is now. So, the enterprises, if they really want to have the agile processes incorporated, the DevOps dreams achieved, testing cannot be an afterthought. It has to be part of your overall thought process from beginning, and it has to be done right now from this time. That was all from my side. This is my information. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can scan this barcode and you can connect with me. Happy to take any questions offline, but because if you are having any such use cases or challenges in place wherein you want to have your customers really have a thought around testing, test automation and enterprise adoption, we can have a word around it. Thank you. You have been a wonderful audience.
Thank you so much, Kapil, for that session.
Thank you.
Engaging session. Please stay here.
Yeah.
I would like to invite Mr. Navneet Samia to come on the stage and felicitate Kapil, please. Navneet is head of NASSCOM Future Skills program. Can we have a round of applause, please? So guys, I have I have some important announcements.